Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us from around the world. And welcome to day two of our 2023 MindBridge Edge Conference, the Human Edge. My name is TJ Smith, and I'm the Director of Customer Success here at MindBridge. But more importantly, please join me in welcoming Kim and Shaquille, who have been working to ensure that the numbers are aligned for Align Technology. I hope you see what I did there. Align Technology is the global leader, is a global medical device company, and it is not just any global medical device company, because Align is changing lives and brightening our world through better smiles. And this is something that we can all relate to. At Align, it's not just about reinventing the orthodontic profession, it's also about constant internal reinvention. Kim and Shaquille have been and are augmenting their teams and internal audit programs by daring to imagine where AI and other technologies can take them. And for that reason, I am so excited today to have them join us. I really hope that this fireside chat can lend a spark to any of you in the audience who are looking to challenge your teams with AI. So please, don't be shy. If you have any questions, I highly encourage you to ask away. Now, without any further ado, I'd love to get into it. Kim, Shaquille, it's really great to have you both here. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourselves, what Align does, and how you're currently employing MindBridge and other technologies in your internal audit department?
Hi, Tyler. Thanks for having us. Hi, my name is Kim, and I'm the director with the internal audit group for Align Technology. My basic responsibilities are for the Americas regions and for headquarters. So I've been with Align for about 7 years. My scope of work includes, I started my career, my time here at Align as a Sarbanes-Oxley manager, and kind of progressively moved through operational audits. And in recent times, was asked to start our data analytics group and automation initiatives along with Shaquille. I'm also responsible for enterprise risk management and investigations. Shaquille?
So thanks, Tyler, for an amazing intro. So that already sets the stage for us. So I'm Shaquille Nasirkan. I'm a director in an internal audit department. I'm responsible for the EMEA region. And if we look at the scope of work I'm performing, we're doing operational audits in our region. But the most exciting stuff, I think, is that together with Kim, we're really spearheading our data analytics and automation initiatives within the department. This is one of the stuff I really, wake up for in the morning. And other than that, we also use this data analytics automation initiatives to support with other stuff like enterprise risk management, as Kim mentioned, compliance-related topics. Think about data privacy and GDPR, which is specific to my region, and investigations. If you think about my background, I think it's relevant to mention I've worked at KPMG. Probably there are some folks at KPMG in the call. Worked as an SAP consultant and an ERP internal control consultant. And together with Kim, that really helped in setting the stage and understanding the data for ingestion of MindBridge and getting that set correctly. So that's a bit of who we are. If we briefly talk about Align Technology, I don't think I could have done it better than you did with the smiles and the stuff you mentioned is already excellent. But just briefly to try to top it, we're a global medical device company, and we primarily focus at the manufacturing and selling of clear aligners and also intraoral scanners. And next to that, also the development of dental CAD software. If you look at our portfolio, one of the most, I think, significant and known product is Invisalign, which are the clear aligners. And we have approximately 15 million patients and counting using and leveraging going through the Invisalign treatment. Next to that, the other important product we have in our portfolio is iTero, which are the intraoral scanners, which can be used for scanning the teeth to prepare for the Invisalign treatments, but also in combination with dental CAD software, look at restorative flows for the denticians and the orthodontist. If you combine these two products, Invisalign and iTero, and we look at the Align digital platform, which is something that's core to our business, basically the patient goes into a practice, instead of having an impression, they scan their teeth and then they go through the entire flow. So they could visualize how their smile would look like, apply algorithms, just I think is being done with MindBridge, but in a different space, and then going in the best way possible to help patients getting better smiles. That's in a nutshell what we do. So 3 key things: clear aligners, intraoral scanners, and dental CAD software, trying to integrate that within the Align digital platform. Then moving on specifically, and Kim will go into further detail, but I would just highlight, the 3 main things we are currently utilizing MindBridge for, which may expand in the future. The 3 main areas are internal audit purposes, the classic way we're using it. So we're using it as the folks know on the call, as a financial risk anomaly detection tool. So we mainly use that for the risk segmentation part. So to me, that is the core, that is the engine of MindBridge. If you look at the risk segmentation, it allows us to look at specific accounts, let's say inventory, let's say cash, and look at the specific risk we're seeing there to further analyze that. So that's one of the elements. The other key thing, and for me being an SAP consultant in the past, being very specific to the GRC suite of that, I'm also very interested to look at the user side of things. So what users are performing high-risk transactions, for what reason, or do we see users in specific entities we never expected to actually do a posting? So these things are very useful. So that's one element. The second piece that Kim and I are exploring is to support it with operational audits and site visits. Let's say Kim is going to Chile or something next week, and we really easily want to analyze what is going on there from a financial risk perspective. He could easily filter, analyze the data, and use it as a tool to discuss with his stakeholders, right? I mean, normally that would take ages to develop and prepare. Because now it can be done in 20 minutes, for example. The third piece is the piece we're still developing, but very exciting about, is to expand basically MindBridge just beyond internal audit. So to provide it to the controllers. So one thing Kim and I did when he was with me in Switzerland is to provide it, for example, to the EMEA accounting team to support them with statutory audits. If you think about very significant markets like France, the Netherlands, and those kind of things, they have, of course, their own statutory audits, which would help the first and second line of defense to really utilize the tool and be quicker in detecting risk even when we don't have to look at them. So those are the three key main areas. So I want to hand it over to Kim, who is even more into detail in MindBridge, just to see his perspective on these things.
No, thanks, Shaquille. All the things that you talk about, leads to one thing, and what we primarily try to get from MindBridge is, creating leverage within our team. So we're a relatively small team, like our operational audit team, we cover, the globe, we're about, 6 people, right? We're a team of 6 covering all geographical locations, around the world. And what MindBridge allows us to do is, create leverage within our teams. We're not stuck, performing traditional, audit procedures. What really drew us to MindBridge was, for me, it was the control points, right? I looked at the list of control points and, I thought like, wow, each of these control points was, historically a test that we would do in our audit procedures, right? And it would take a team to pull the samples and, now MindBridge, allowed us, basically to perform all these procedures just with the refresh, right? And and then take that data and then present it in an easy to use manner that what Shaquille's talking about, right? We can easily now go in and get to the data and be able to do these procedures that historically would take weeks to do with a team of auditors. Now we're able to do that with just with the tool, out of the box, right? So I think that was really key in us, for our use case with MindBridge, right? And then the analyzing of the full population, right? That was really powerful for us as well. Before, starting our data analytics department, we were, traditional internal audit shop, doing things the traditional way, sample basis, getting only, partial coverage. But with MindBridge, it really allowed us to, take our audit activities to the next level.
That's amazing. Yeah, thank you, Kim. Thank you, Shaquille. And I really like how you call out at the end there, going beyond that traditional approach, getting away from looking at the needle, looking for the needle in the haystack, and being more intentional with your procedures. I think it's a theme that we've heard, throughout day one as well. So it's really amazing. I think it's easy for everybody in the audience to now understand why we refer to you as a state-of-the-art our internal audit department. So I'd love if you could tell me a little bit about that. What does it mean to you? What has the journey been like for you to become a state-of-the-art internal audit department at Align?
Yeah, I'll take this one. We started off like many traditional internal audit groups, Excel files, using macros, leveraging, at the time, tools like IDEA, ACL, we thought that was, really state-of-the-art stuff, and it was at the time. But, what we found was that, these were more, aimed at, one-off type of analysis, very targeted, non-repeatable type of activities, right? And and what really, was a catalyst for us to kind of, up our game was actually our external auditors. They started coming to us asking questions, during their scoping and their risk assessment, you know, really zooming in on areas that, we were totally, blind to, right? And when they shared with us, their use of data analytics in their risk, in their risk assessment process, it really sparked something in our team to say like, hey, we really need to up our game so that, we can be on equal footing with them, right? We were blindsided a couple of times, and that really, motivated us to really up our game, right? So we actually then, started our journey in upping our data analytics game. Starting with, building an infrastructure, acquiring tools, and that journey, eventually led us to MindBridge. And maybe Shaquille, you can talk about maybe that journey there, because I know that you were there in the early days, pushing that along.
Yeah, so I forgot to mention this start, but I started at Align as an IT auditor, and then I moved to more to business. So at the beginning, I think 5 years ago now, we just started out, and I started working with Kim more and more and more over time, and we started learning that our dynamic was perfect. Me from the technical side, Kim has an extremely perfect process knowledge at Align, and that just worked out. So I think 3 or 4 years ago, we started with building out an infrastructure, which was key. We needed to have a powerful server, which we could lay on the foundation. If you think as internal audit data analytics as a house, that server was key to us. We needed something extremely powerful. Think about 700 gigabytes plus in memory servers. Those are the things you need to think about. Building upon that, the next challenge was, okay, now we have our infrastructure. We can independently of IT work, which is always, people are always competing for resources, but now we could independently work on stuff. How do we get to the data? So then we started looking at, okay, what tools can we acquire to extract the data? How can we extract billions of records? We are an SAP shop, so we had to extract. And then at the same time, we were dealing with a good thing, with the extreme growth, the hyper growth of the company means that the data would also grow exponentially. So the need became bigger and bigger and bigger. So we had the extraction tool, and then we had to think about, okay, are we going to create the queries ourselves? Are we going to define everything ourselves, creating all the queries in SAP? We tried, but it's not really efficient. You can never beat something else that's a third-party tooling. So we expanded on that, and then we had a data model. So we could already leverage basically a tool that had the data, plus we could easily leverage the model. We could replicate order to cash, we could replicate purchase to pay, we could replicate the GL, everything, and those kind of things. Then we had that, we moved over to a process mining type of thing. So even a step further, which means how to detect bottlenecks. How do we know where delivery gets stuck? Why do we think a payment needs to be is late? Why is master data being updated 100,000 times? Then we moved even a step further. We thought, okay, let's go into workflow tooling. How do we connect this entire infrastructure? So we went into workflow tooling. Then we went into continuous control monitoring. So how do we, on a continuous basis, for example, check the trio match settings? How do we check for negative stock? How do we check for critical fields changes and so forth? And they were kind of, okay, what's the next thing, right? We have all this data, we have this foundation set, but how can we really dive through the GL and how can we dive through the data to find the financial risks here? And that's when Kim actually started looking into stuff. We started looking into stuff, and then Kim said, hey, what about MindBridge? And the conversation started, and we thought, wow, we laid this foundation over the years, and we created a data set that actually is possible to quite easily ingest and really shorten the time required to implement tools such as MindBridge, because we were already ahead. We were working on this stuff for years, and now was the time was right to leverage MindBridge. And that's where we are now, right? So this is we went through all this stuff. We looked at SQL scripting, we looked at Python, we learned a lot throughout the journey. But then why would we reinvent and do something ourselves where MindBridge already provides so much stuff already out of the box? So this is like how we went there. Of course, being a state-of-the-art department is relative, but lately we've learned while talking to other companies that we're quite ahead. We can be quite proud of it. And I think MindBridge at the stage we are now and moving from there could be the cherry on top of things. So this just in a nutshell. So we moved from a sample-based to a more data-driven approach, letting the data speak, having automation, and moving from that. So that's why we think, people can disagree that we are a state-of-the-art internal audit department.
Well, I'll tell you what, Shaquille, I definitely will not disagree with you. I think you should be very proud of your journey so far, and I can't wait to see what's next. I think it's really amazing the journey that you've come on, because it's been IA that's been with it the entire way. Usually when we see journeys like this around data warehousing and get everything together, it's tech pushing it. But I really love and I really resonate with the fact that you were there driving it and bringing value to your organization every step of the way. That is absolutely amazing to me. And because that journey was so robust, what are some of the experiences that you feel you've had that have contributed to the success of that journey? And what are the mindsets that you felt you had to adopt in order to go through that digital transformation?
You want to take this one first, Ken?
Yeah, sure. I mean, kind of like what you mentioned, TJ. I mean, it really was a grassroots efforts with our team. I mean, we really had to, lay down the foundation. Because we had basically when we started no budget, right? So we had to really fight for every cent that we had, right? And demonstrate the need. And I think, I mean, we started off small, right? I mean, to gradually build our initiative off, right? So, we started with specific use cases. I mean, we built from there, and we as we learned and, got more comfortable with the data and with what was required, we started slowly building from there, right? Like Shaquille had mentioned, we started with, the infrastructure, right? Because, just on that platform, it just gave us the capabilities, right, to do what we're doing. But, it was more of, learning, right? I mean, we had to be, learners. And, I by no means is like a data scientist or data analyst by trade. I'm traditional, started my career in audit, right? Just, ticking, tying, work papers. And, it was just, being able to have that learning mindset, right? I think that's just very important. And
No, I agree. I think one of the key things is really starting small and gradually increasing. I remember that Kim and I, we started with Power BI, and we would analyze price changes or something. And we'd be very excited, just one-off analysis, and then you get motivated and you start building further. I think one of the other key elements that's really important to the success is not being afraid to fail, right? Now you hear the journey about all the stuff we did, and it looks like it was climbing the mountain in one go, but it isn't, right? You come through a storm, you come into objections of folks, you come into technical difficulties, limitations. We have to reinvent ourselves every time. And sometimes you try maybe a tool and maybe it doesn't work out. And then you have to explain it as well. And you have to start over again. So I think starting small is a key learning, I guess, and also not being afraid to try new things and having that innovation mindset is definitely something that's really key. And being willing to just think beyond traditional auditing and be willing to convince folks, right? And that's also how Kim inspires me. He brings something new. We sometimes bring something new, and then he just continues and he just shows that he believes in it, and then we go from there. And then we get energy from each other as well, from the company, and those things are key in my view.
That's amazing. So I just want to dig in a little bit too. When you talk about that learning culture, how did you foster that learning culture within your internal audit department in order to drive that continuous improvement and that sort of snowball effect that Kim was alluding to?
Yeah, I think it starts with the mindset, as I mentioned earlier, to be willing to just learn and innovate, and that snowball effect you mentioned, I think, is a good example. At some point, you become so motivated that when you're driving home, when you get home, you're even going to develop yourself further. So as Kim mentioned, we are no programmers. We are not technical folks. We're not Python programmers, but we would just develop a query, and then we say, do you know this, and with this, and we use Stack Overflow, and we were learning to climb the mountain along the way. So we would just get inspired by the willingness to learn, I guess. And the other key thing that I think is also very important is that we have a CAE that supports that. So we bring stuff to him, but he's really willing to help us, and he sees the changes we go through, and he's willing to invest time and to invest money and support us with this initiative, because I think if you don't have that, that's really difficult. So, I mean, we are fortunate that we have the ability to do it. Fortunate that we have the ability to try things out. We have the ability, we are fortunate we are a company that's I mean, it's not like a shell gas company, right? It's a company that's going into hyper growth. So that means that you also learn along the way, and it creates a different environment. It creates a innovation environment. And if you look at the DNA of the company, which is providing and having machine learning to making teeth move in a certain way to predict that, I think all this stuff fits into the DNA of applying it, but then more to the back office and more to internal other stuff. So I guess just the internal motivation, the intrinsic motivation, and getting the support from our leader, I think that's really key to us.
That's awesome. I really think that you highlighted the importance of fostering that learning and that innovation culture and how it can really pay dividends for the business. Now, I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk a bit about your actual MindBridge implementation and your broader transformation. As you were going through that, what were some of the things that you identified as critical success factors, and how did you actually assess yourself against these?
You can kick this one off.
Yeah, no, I think first and foremost was the stakeholder alignment and management buy-in, right, and the CAE buy-in, right, because ultimately we had to make the business case with our with our CAE that this was an investment for our company. I mean, it was probably one of the first tools that we acquired, right, in terms of helping us augment our team, right? So I think it was making that business case and being able to get the alignment from internally, but then externally just as important, right, was getting IT's buy-in, right, and then getting our all of our leaders that were getting them kind of supported and behind it as well, right? I mean, getting all those pieces lined up, because there are other things that are out of our control right now. You had mentioned that we try to control a lot of having our own servers and things like that, but but we require support from the IT teams, the SCP base, there's a litany of teams that we needed to get that support from, right? And I think getting that alignment was very important. And then just getting to the data itself, right, Shaquille? I mean, we spent a lot of there was the way that we implement SAP, and the way that our business is run, we generate a lot of data, right? And getting to that data definitely was a challenge. And I think just understanding the data was also very important for us to get a handle on, right, Shaquille?
No, definitely, and I think if how are we assessing ourselves against these? Perfect, of course. No, just kidding. But I think that the three key elements in this is getting to the data. I think one very good factor in this was the partnership with Wing from your team. He was really instrumental to help with us, and he was so kind to provide his technical knowledge and support us with that. So that was very key, the critical success factor. The other piece that I think was also instrumental is presenting the tool just beyond just internal audit and get their feedback in order to make it more relevant, to tweak it some more. And I think this was, but is a critical success factor because it means it can increase the adoption of MindBridge just beyond internal audit. And listening to the Chevron session yesterday, he mentioned also this spontaneous use cases that occur. And we try to foster that as well. That session inspired me to also think beyond it and think if we expand and promote it beyond just internal audit, that could maybe also spark and leverage those things. So one of the critical success factors, I think, is that piece, because we had a discussion with the controllers. We had them in a room and in a call across the globe, and they were just coming up with stuff. And I said, hey, it's useful for this, or can it do this? Can it do that? And that, I think, is a critical success factor, just to wrap that one up.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a great point, and it's the implementation team, right? I mean, just MindBridge themselves, really helped us in this process, and I think they were very critical, to our success, right? Because Shaquille and I, we have day jobs also, right? So this was really, like an extra, extra to on top of our daily, responsibilities, right? So they helped keep us on track, and I mean, they, I can honestly say that I've been implemented many tools in my career, and just the way the team was engaged, and just the way that they kind of walked us through it. I mean, it was really made it one of the easiest implementations that I've done. So I think the team really was a critical factor in that. Yeah.
Yeah. The other piece I would like to highlight this because I'm a huge fan of The Office, and I used to tell this to Joe and Melissa of the MindBridge team. If you for the first time see MindBridge, it can be a lot, right? But then if you focus it, as I mentioned earlier, to the core, to the engine of MindBridge, to me, it's the risk segmentation section. So one of the key critical success factors is how do you simplify it for the stakeholders? And I told them, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old, like Michael Scott said in The Office. So that's a significant critical success factor because how you make it simple. That's very important.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm really happy to hear about all the experiences you've had so far. I think it's easy for everyone to see why you're one of our favorite customers. But I'm also really excited that you're trying to bring this to other departments because you see an opportunity to create value. And I think that's an amazing paradigm shift for internal audit as a whole. And it really speaks to you being that state of our internal audit department. Not only are we going to do our jobs, but we're going to try to go beyond that and drive value for the organization. I really like the points that you raised about getting the data in and making sure you have that correct data set being a critical success factor. So I'd like to sort of dive into this a little bit. Now it can be hard, when we're dealing with large volumes of data and I'd like you to talk within the rules of what you're allowed to disclose. What was some of those lessons that you learned at the start of your MindBridge implementation journey that you wish you knew today that you could go back when you were starting your implementation around getting the data in?
Yeah, I can take this. So what I think we would wish we would do at the start is if we could tell our past selves where to start, we would immediately go to a proper third-party tool to extract data. And we're a little bit unique in that at Align because we're competing with IT resources. We have a lot of initiatives going on also from an R&D perspective. But it's instrumental and crucial because you need to get to a data set. That's one element I think is extremely important. So to get to that data set, to acquire a tool that can do that. And in addition to that, to at an earlier stage, engage actually with our stakeholders. So we have a big amount of data, right? I mean, think about billions and billions of records we issue. And then, if we bring it to Wing is going crazy because we have so much data. So how are you going to scope that? And we only did it after a couple of months. We started talking to our controllers, and they explained to us which GL accounts were relevant, which GL accounts were not relevant. And this really helped us because sometimes there may be GL elements for those who are SAP savvy that maybe are part of the controlling model. And maybe those GL accounts are not so relevant, but still they produce enormous amounts of records. And filtering these out can actually make it easier in terms of the speed of the tool, in terms of having more entities in the tooling. So to me, those two things are key. Starting out immediately with the ETL process, with a proper ETL process, which is key to ingesting data into MindBridge. And the second is actually engage with stakeholders who actually know the data much better than IA, just to be humble in this, such as the controllers and the accountants who continuously, on a continuous basis, daily work with this stuff and really know what matters and what doesn't. So to me, those are the key elements that in relation to data are very important, which I could tell my past self.
Yeah, and I think for myself was, similar to, learn more about your data, right? I think that's understanding your data, because I think, through this journey, I think, I'm not technical by any means, right? But now I feel like, I know more about, SAP tables than I should, but that was just through this journey, right? And I think it's making me a better auditor, just from it, just understanding, how SAP works and understanding, the table relations and the relations between the different modules. I mean, historically, IT audit was a separate beast from operational audit. Everybody kind of stayed in their lane, but as we kind of, kind of been on this journey and it's really blending now, right? I mean, now you're just an auditor, right? I mean, there's almost no distinction between IT and operation anymore because, both needs to know each other's, it definitely, I wish, I was able to get more attuned to the data, right? And not rely on IT. I think that's what makes us successful, right, Shaquille, is that, we're both operations and IT, right? Where, I think a lot of teams, what I hear, in larger organizations, sometimes, they're they're kind of mutually exclusive, right? One team works on business process, the other team works with the data. If anything with data, let's go to the data team, and that kind of, I think that would have slowed things down for us. But we kind of took it upon ourselves to learn both sides of it, right? And I think that's really helped us in dealing with the volume of the data and understanding it much better and kind of working through roadblocks much quicker.
Yeah, just one other thing I would like to add to that, Tyler, before we move on further, is one of the things I was impressed about with MindBridge is the way it was customized to us. So where we weren't going to the data, obviously one of the key things to auditors and to controllers in general is our manual journal entry. And if you think about SAP, and I'm glad I got that KPMG background, because they have, in my view, the correct way to identify what is a manual journal entry. And we keep having discussions with external auditors, what is the correct population, which document types, which transaction combinations, which is system user or no system users, and so forth. And we already had that logic built. And when we were working with MindBridge, specifically with Wing, we were able to apply that logic, incorporate it in MindBridge into the data set, and actually create a manual journal entry flag. So I'm not talking about the control points you guys have out of the box. I'm talking here about a flag that was specifically added for us. So if we filter, we can actually now filter if something is a manual journal entry based on the logic that we as internal audit defined, based on the logic that Kim and I from years of experience defined. So that logic, we got it into MindBridge. And I think, talking about what I could have told us past selves, this data set was also instrumental to that. And that was one of the things that's for us very, very useful, because we don't have to look at thresholds or manual journal entries. We just have that flag. So if you want to just look at it, we know this manual journal entry is a manual journal entry to us, because it's always a big discussion what constitutes a manual journal entry, especially in SAP. But now we have it the way we think and we feel it's correct. That's just something I wanted to mention as well.
Wow, that's amazing, and it's really interesting how when you started this, it was so much emphasis went into getting that right data set to be able to cut through all that noise. And Kim, I really liked how you talked about at the start, you had no clue, you weren't a programmer. I think a lot of us start that way, and it's super inspiring for me to hear about the journey that you've been on as an individual. So how has leveraging some of the technologies, such as MindBridge and others, help transform your value proposition as an internal audit department to your business? How has it helped you provide more value to your business?
Yeah, sure. I can start this off. I think it's being able to be faster with the data, right? I think historically how we would have a document request or a data request, and we would go away for like a week or month, to kind of synthesize the data. Now, leveraging the 40 control points, right? I mean, I always go back to that because I'm just amazed how that creates instant leverage, right? We're used to have a team of staff auditors working on these tests and things like that. We're now able to kind of get out of that that nuts and bolts testing. You really get to the analysis, right? So I think that's really where the value comes, right? Because we can get right to the analysis and be able to get to what really matters, right? Get to the high risk transactions, get through the noise. We shrink that haystack, right? So we can easily find the needles, right? So I think that's where we can provide the value, is that we can intelligently look at the high risk populations and be able to kind of get to what's important. And then moving from sample base to full population analysis, right? I mean, that's where everything is going towards right now. I mean, our auditors are moving towards that direction as well, right? So how can we say that we have a good handle on our risk if we're not doing it the way they're doing it, right? So I think by leveraging MindBridge, it allows us to keep pace with how our auditors are moving. And I think it helps us be more valuable to the business, right? Because we can easily faster get to them and explain to them where there's areas of risk and kind of show them in an intelligent way, like, hey, this is where areas that we need to kind of keep our focus on.
Yeah, I think to me, one of the things that transformed is definitely, I call it faster data to market, the way I call it. I guess this is just a phrase I use, right? If I play it out in my brain, if I would have to analyze the financial transactions, I would log on to SAP. I would go into, a transaction code. I would look at something individually, and I would have to figure out which tables. I would download the table. I would extract it. I would VLOOKUP it, and so forth and so forth. And then I would do it, I don't know how many times, which would take me weeks, or depending on the analysis, to replicate what MindBridge does, maybe a couple of months, right? And now, because we ingest the data, we are much quicker. So technically or theoretically, I could jump on the plane, maybe have the airplane Wi-Fi. I run it in the plane, use my time usefully, we had the site visit, and be ready. And that's something that would never be possible because the amount of data you have to go through, the analysis you would have to go through. So if we think about how has MindBridge transformed our department, it's definitely this ROI from going from months of work to a couple of minutes. I think that is key. And to have something we would have never been able to do before. If I think about tools from we used at the start, like IDEA, you had the Benford analysis, you had the suspicious keyword analysis that we had to use, and we would create them individually in Python, and we run them, and it just took up a lot of time. And now we can leverage from the algorithms that are there, the control points that are there, and every time those control points get expanded, they get updated. That's one thing that definitely helped us refine. The other piece I think that's important is that MindBridge allows us to bring the first, second, and third line of defense more together. And by that I mean there's still, of course, a segregation, but it means that instead of like sometimes internal audit maybe interfering too much with the first and second line of defense, maybe have the first and second line thing more as a third line of defense, right? They're using the tool to already catch stuff earlier to incorporate that in their workflow. So it expands kind of the way you expand the way that we are being perceived. And I think it also is in line with internal audit being more operating as a trusted advisor versus a traditional going for a sample. So those are very key things. And I think it transforms stuff because we get more input from our stakeholders in helping us to really define risk. And that's one of the key things. Instead of working in isolation, those are definitely elements that really help us transform it. But biggest thing I think is the time saving and the ability to do something that we were not able to do before. So I always think back of this iceberg. I'm not sure if you use English word iceberg, but the picture that I know, the unknown unknowns, and that's where it comes down to. And that's really it. I mean, just very simple. That's the way it transformed us. You could use a lot of words to think about it, but in a nutshell, it really comes down to that. The speed, the data to market, I'll repeat it again, and just being able to test the full population, not just a couple of thousands of records, just test the full population, right? If we think about an inventory account, we have, let's say 500,000 transactions, right? Think about the aligners, think about the materials that go into that. We have 500,000 items and maybe 2 of them are high risk. MindBridge allows us to see that those 2 items or those 2 entries are actually maybe 70% of the total dollar amount. That's something we would never be able to catch. How would you leverage that with a sample base? You could, of course, argue, we look at the value, but you may miss those. And those things has really transformed the way we operate. Leave it at that.
Yeah. And also, like MindBridge, I think what I really like about what is MindBridge journey also, right? Because I think, as MindBridge is, constantly releasing new features, and how many times, Shaquille, have we had like, a conversation with Melissa or Michelle, and we're like, well, it'd be nice to have this. Well, that's in the next release, right? So it's great to see how MindBridge is constantly evolving and getting better. And I think as MindBridge kind of grows as a platform, I think we were along that journey as well, and and leveraging that growth as well, right? And those new technologies as they come out, because it helps us kind of increase our game as well, right? So I think it's not like a static tool where you kind of use it as a tool in your tool belt, but it's just something that's evolving, and it's just becoming an important tool for us.
That's amazing. And everything you've talked about the journey so far, I'm about ready to say you are not a state-of-the-art audit department, you are the state-of-the-art audit department. And if anybody would like to disagree with me on that, you can reach out. I'm happy to entertain that conversation. So we've talked so much about this journey that you've been on so far. I want to start wrapping things up with the question of what's next for Align Internal Audit Department. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, and I guess I can take that. I mean, I think Shaquille, you kind of touched on, we're expanding the usage of MindBridge to, to the first and second lines of defense. I think that's a key initiative for us. But then also, there's a couple interesting new products, that you guys are offering that we're very interested in as well. Your Flex products, right? So I think that's on our list as well, as to evaluate those tools. I know that our compliance teams, have just expressed some interest in some of those, and just trying to learn more and grow with the team. I mean, but I think it's more of just exploring what MindBridge can do for us and how we can kind of evangelize it within our business.
Definitely, I can only attest to that. And I think what I would also like to say is that throughout this journey, just specifically to the MindBridge team, Melissa, Joe, Wing, I probably forgets folks, JC, yourself, it really feels like a partnership. I think no matter how many meetings we wanted to have with you guys, or no much, it would usually be you guys chasing us instead of the other way around. It has been a very pleasant journey, and maybe being KPMG alumni, having some KPMG alumni there as well. It's just a great journey. So just wanted to highlight that one as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. We have a few audience questions, so I'll just start teeing them up. We have a few more minutes here. So the first question is, what is the most interesting thing that you have found that you are allowed to talk about using MindBridge that you weren't expecting?
That's a sensitive question. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, no, I think what MindBridge, I think, this is specifically around some of the machine learning control points, right? I think it helped us understand some of the some of the behaviors of our accountants, right? I think we found some transactions just through the analysis and kind of digging in, what was surfacing in MindBridge. We were able to find some activity that was, I don't know, how do you call it, unusual, right? And it really helped us, kind of drill in and leveraging, the power of MindBridge to actually identify like a training issue, right? Because I thought that was pretty interesting because, in a normal audit, it may be something that we wouldn't have surfaced, right? So I think, there were, we were able to kind of specifically attribute MindBridge to helping us identify a training opportunity, which we then shared with the business, which the business then acknowledged that, hey, we do have an opportunity here, right? And they were able to. We then worked with the business to get together an action plan to help retrain the department on the importance of a posting of certain transactions, and I think it was a win-win for both teams. We were able to do it, with MindBridge because it was able to surface something that we normally wouldn't have been able to find. Right?
So I get the question, because I had the question as well. Sometimes you think, if I find something key with MindBridge, the tool sells itself. At the same time, you don't want to find something, right? So to give that answer, what is the most interesting thing I found is that I found not as much as I expected. So that means that you're actually doing quite well. So that to me was also some reassurance. The most challenging thing is always, how do you sell risk, right? So sometimes you want to find the smoking gun, but you don't. So to me, the most interesting piece, fortunately, is that we are doing a good job. So that was to answer that question.
Amazing. I love it. The absence of something is still something, and I think that's often lost. That is all the time that we have for today. So I want to thank both you, Shaquille and Kim, from Align Technology, for joining us today. This was a really insightful conversation. I'd like to thank everybody in the audience who tuned in and asked their questions. Really appreciate you all. We hope you're enjoying day 2 of MindBridge Edge Conference. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Tyler.